And the first thing I'd like to do is take a second to introduce our speakers. My name is Shayna Horka, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Gimmal. And I'm joined by our key speaker today, Gimmal's Vice Chairman, David Quackenbush.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Now, before we get started with the presentation, I have just a few housekeeping items to go through. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit them in the Q&A section on your screen, and we'll answer as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. It is a 30-minute presentation, so we'll try to get as many as we can in before we end. There will be at least one poll question that you'll see pop up on your screen, so please keep an eye out for that, and we'll go over the results as a group. And as always, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know so we can assist you. All right, so to kick things off, I have just one slide here to tell you a little bit about Gimmal and how we can help you take control of your information with our suite of solutions. Founded in 2002, Gimmal is a records, information management, and governance software company that helps you balance the value your information provides with the risk it also presents. Whether you're trying to discover new information in unstructured data sources, respond quickly to data requests, or comply with policies across multiple sources, Gimmal can help you achieve your information governance goals. We have a client success team and a global network of partners that deliver solutions in conjunction with our key partners like Microsoft and SAP. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive solutions include records management, content governance for SharePoint, document management for SAP solutions, and now Altitude, a file analysis solution. But without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to David so he can go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you, Shayna. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us for another quick webinar on information governance. And from the last one, those that attended the last one, we kind of talked about putting a foundation in place and what those basics were. Today, we're really going to go into a more specific topic, which is a center of excellence a good choice for you to implement an information governance program in your organization? So we'll start with a kind of look at the current state of what's going on with information governance programs in the clients that we talk to and common challenges that they're facing. Define what a center of excellence means. This term's been around for a while, nothing new. With the concept of a center of excellence, but applied to information governance, what does it really mean? And then a couple of ways to get the ball rolling with your own program, whether or not you take this approach, but certainly an important element of the center of excellence in getting started. So today, this is what we see out in the world from a information governance program perspective with the people that we're talking to, with our clients, talking to just sort of industry groups in general. A lot of the surveys you read, there's lots of information out there about some of the challenges. The first one that we kind of see is a lot of these things are treated like a project, and so they have an end to them. And the challenge with information governance is that it has to be something persistent. It can't really have an end because, much like maintaining an asset of any kind, you've got to constantly be putting things into its care and feeding if you expect it to be long-lasting and effective. A lot of the IG program deliverables that we've seen recently are paper-based, and they're delivered that way. We'll come in to a client organization that may have already done some kind of strategy or some kind of initial program around building a governance plan or something of that nature, and a nice document or set of documents are created. Maybe they're in a binder. Everyone gets a copy that sees the new policies and procedures for how to manage their information in the corporate environment. And then those, like most other things that are in a binder or paper form, show up on a shelf somewhere and are largely ignored or forgotten very quickly. And then, of course, you have the common problem of I got to make sure and give them to the next people that come on board in my company every time as well. And I've got to have a supply of those things and make sure they're current for all the new people that are coming into my organization so that they have something to work off of. So that's a big challenge. You know, I don't know why I put this one number 3, because it really probably is number 1, and that's lack of executive sponsorship. And that lack of sponsorship leads to lack of adoption. So if you can't drive these programs from the top down with the right messaging, with the right what's in it for me, with the right why is this important to our organization, it's pretty hard to get people to change the way they've been doing things, and in particular, do it consistently. And lack of adoption today is still your biggest challenge, probably bar none, in executing one of these information governance programs. We've seen the skills and the team created to execute an IT program to be limited on skill set, or too narrow of a skill set. So maybe it's the project is started in the records management organization and it doesn't include a multidisciplinary team. So nothing against the records managers running a program like this. It makes perfect sense in many cases, but you need a multidisciplinary team so that you really can take a full view of the people, process, and technology challenges associated with an information governance program. And last but not least, lack of a change management program to really drive adoption. So again, if you think about item 3 and lack of executive sponsorship, these two go hand in hand. If I don't have an ongoing program that's constantly communicating with the organization, constantly providing the what's in it for me and the what's in it for the business concepts, your adoption rates just goes very low, very quickly. So with that, before we jump in, we'll throw up a quick poll just to kind of get a gauge from the audience here in terms of if you've gone through one of these things, what's your experience been?
Poll results are coming in now. We'll just give it a couple more minutes.
Okay. So are we ready to move on, gang?
There it goes. You should see the results now.
So I suppose based on what we laid out, not surprising that that these challenges are fairly well known for most organizations that have attempted to really focus on information governance in their organization. That's a pretty high percentage rate of folks that have had similar challenges. That 8% that haven't, we'd probably like to hear your own stories as to what's worked well that you've allowed yourself to avoid some of those challenges. All right, so moving on. So mistakes, and so common mistakes that we see made in executing on an information governance program are pretty, I don't know, pretty straightforward in a lot of ways. The first one might be a little bit challenging for some, and that's commingling the past with the future. You know, the problem with information governance in most organizations, and the problem with information in general in most organizations is there's such a huge volume of historical information that's been largely ignored or unmanaged. And, you know, in some cases, you're talking 30 years or more, you know, almost since the beginning of desktop networking, of content piling up in the organization, and using that as your backdrop to lay out your game plan for the future can be somewhat of an overwhelming task if you're trying to keep them completely linked together. So, you know, our point of view is start with a future focused model in mind that really isn't clouded with the past from a people, process, and technology perspective. How do you want to do things? What is the new world order as it relates to how work's going to get done because of mobile devices and maybe even work from home and things like that. And then once you've got that figured out, then figure out now, how do I bring what I want from the past with me? And I'm going to find out that I'm going to leave a whole lot of it behind, and I'm going to rot it out, or I'm going to let it expire and disposition it in where it lives, because most of that stuff's probably already expired anyway. Lack of persistent measurement. So again, when you create a program and it's going to be long lasting, the best way to make sure that it's long lasting is you have a measurement process that keeps it front of mind for people throughout its life cycle. And so making it evergreen, transparency, continuous measurement and improvement are the things that are important concepts to take away here. And, you know, again, it's really asset-based thinking, right? This information that you're managing is an asset, whether the organization treats it that way or not. It really is. And it deserves the care and feeding that go along with any other asset tracking or asset management function you have in your business, which normally includes measurement and continuous improvement. Understanding the need for executive sponsorship and change management and single points of accountability. We mentioned this a second ago, but creating a program that has these visible activities of leadership from the top, change management programs and communication programs, and a true owner that says, well, who owns this thing? And you can point to a group or a person, and that person or group is somewhat of a persistent group in the organization, make a huge difference in their ability to be successful. And one thing to note here is, you know, your IG program is going to have a big challenge if it isn't focused on making work easier and better for the organization. I mean, the challenge here is people love to talk about compliance and risk management and all those kinds of things, and those are all valuable things to talk about, but not that many people are all that interested in those. Only a few people in the organization versus everybody's interested in how it makes it easier for me to find information, how it is easier for me to get my work done, how it's easier for me to do a better quality job because I'm working with the right information. So again, I think you have to make sure that that is an important part of what you're trying to accomplish, and it's not just about compliance. So what is a center of excellence, and why is it a good approach for information governance? And, you know, when you think about centers of excellence, these things have been around, concept has been around for a long time. Maybe you haven't heard about it discussed much as it relates to an information governance initiative, but we feel like it's a great way to think about how to make something that requires multidiscipline capabilities, requires a long-standing program, and has an idea of best practice and constant improvement as critical elements of its existence, in a way to get information governance moving in a better direction for your organization. So if you think about it from a way we think about it anyway, it's really these four groups of activities or functions are really important. Governance and best practices. These are the things that should be the charter of a center of excellence. Purpose-focused innovation. So, you know, this isn't just technology for technology's sake. This is, and it's not being out on the bleeding edge, because I don't think anybody in this world believes the bleeding edge is necessarily the right place for a lot of these kinds of activities to be. It's really being out there and being pragmatic and saying what kinds of innovations are going to be helpful to us in getting this journey going, and how much automation is the right level of automation to really improve what we're doing. Knowledge and change management. So change management's important. We've talked about it already quite a bit, but knowledge management too, that's becoming a new, for like the third time around in my career, a new topic of conversation for a lot of organizations. How do I, again, be able to capture information and make it usable so that it makes the organization smarter and helps with all kinds of things, whether it be the crew change or some other challenge that you've got to get people up to speed and perhaps not reinventing the wheel for the third or fourth time in your organization. And then templates and standards. So just like any other center of excellence and just like any other activity out there, the best way to promote consistency is to do so with templates and standards. And organizations are organizations. They all basically have similar things they do every day, regardless of what their purpose is externally to the world. And being able to have consistency inside the organization as work gets done is really the world of these templates and standards. And the thing about that, again, why a center of excellence is that templates and standards aren't static. I mean, you have to continue to evolve and you have to continue to improve them. You have to continue to figure out better ways of doing things. So these are really the cornerstones of a center of excellence, if you will. And again, the whole thing is really surrounded by the focus on people, process, and technology that has to incorporate all of those disciplines in order to be successful. So you might wonder, why do we think that Center of Excellence is the right way to go and what are its advantages? Here's a few. I'm sure that you probably could think of others as well. First, it's robust because it's going to create a cross-functional team with a real charter and real stewardship for information. And that means, among other things, that it's got a place, a seat at the table somewhere where large corporate problems are being discussed. And so you think about a center of excellence, and one of the things that's important to have in that is a steering committee that guides that center of excellence with executive leadership. It's got to be an important topic for them. And if it's an important topic for them, they're more than happy to participate in guiding the activities of this center of excellence. It's got to include change management, and it's got to be the way to be effective but neutral in driving change for the enterprise. So this isn't about, symbol clashing and just promotion. It's about truly getting people to buy into why it's important to think and work differently today with the information that you're using, and doing so in a way that's both more productive and also likely to be more beneficial to your colleagues. Technology advancement, again, can happen here. And again, instead of being on the bleeding edge, really what I describe as the proper edge of technology development, what are the right sets of tools? What is the right level of automation that we should be using? And how do I continue to promote the continued use and continue to look to the future about how new technologies can be included in this center of excellence to make this a continuously improving endeavor for the organization. It's effective because it's a focused group. It's not constrained by silos, which typically limit effectiveness. So you have to have an independent group that rises above the silos, if you will, that doesn't have to live in legal or IT or somewhere else. It's part of a group that can be unfettered, if you will, from a lot of the silo-driven challenges that most organizations have. And ultimately, it's persistent and it reduces the problems associated with information governance programs that we see, where you may not make it enterprise level, you might make it departmental, and you give a partial assignment to somebody in the department as an information steward or what have you, and their partial assignment almost immediately guarantees that very little is going to get done because it's 10% of their job or 20% of their job, and the other 80% of their job takes up 100% of their time magically. So, these kinds of challenges, and then what happens when people leave and there's turnover or people get promoted? Is there a good succession plan in place to have the right people working on this all the time? So the Center of Excellence helps solve that problem because there is this consistent body of folks that's driving this. All right, so how do we get started? And really here, this is what we consider a good foundational way to get started with this implementing a maturity model. So I assume that some of y'all have seen or heard about maturity models, and some of y'all might have even attempted to create a maturity model for your organization as it relates to information governance. But we see this as a great starting point for the enterprise and for a center of excellence to have as its way and its path forward, if you will, that allows you to get in there and say, okay, well, what are the things that we want to accomplish with this center of excellence? So defining our criteria. All these things across the bottom of this graph here are typical things that happen in information governance, but your organization may decide, man, that's way too many to focus on. If we just did 10, what are the 10 most important criteria? Let's find those and let's measure those and see where we are today and see where we want to get to. The next step in that group of things to do is determining a baseline. Where am I today? That's represented by the blue line you see in this graph. Where are we today? Are we at a level 1, level 2, level 0? These are they should be somewhat objective measurements that and there's actually a good definition for each of these levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're happy to share some information on that if you like, the ones that we've defined anyway, but that's the whole key, is to have those definitions of levels so that you can quickly assess where you are in determining that baseline. And that assessment, comes from a variety of activities, including both individual interviews and analyses, as well as group sessions to sort out where that baseline is. And then the Center of Excellence team really starts to take this information and say, well, where do we want to be? What are the things that are really most important to us over this period of time? And so when you think about creating a maturity model in the Center of Excellence, it's a time-based thing, because you can't address everything at once. Everything can't be the most important thing. So what are the most important things in our targets for this current period with our maturity model, and how do we get there? So again, really defining where those green lines need to be, where you want to be. Some things you may not even really care about. So you're like, okay, whatever, we're a 3 there. We can stay a 3 there. We don't need to do any better than that. And then use this as one of the tools to constantly measure your progress, whether it's quarterly, whether it's twice a year, whether it's annually. Go back and continue to assess using the maturity model as your assessment tool to see where you're getting to accomplishing your goals and objectives through the Center of Excellence. And then maybe making changes to it, right? Things change, an organization change, it has to stay fluid to some degree because business is changing, the way people work is changing, technology is changing. And so many of the things that you're focusing on and think are important will likely change along with that. So creating a future-focused model. So we talked about this, and one of the mistakes that we commonly see is not being able to separate the past from the future. So when you think about creating a future-focused model, I think one of the first things to do is not only determine where IG fits into how work gets done, but how does work getting done in your organization today affected by information governance. And so that's a little bit of a funky statement, but if you kind of peel it back, it really makes sense. Is, you know, getting work done again is really the key here. How do I get work done better, more effective, more efficiently, so I can be more productive? And so both sides, you have to look at both sides of that coin to really do a proper job in your review. Simplification. This probably can't be underscored enough, and I'm sure it's talked about. Just like in many organizations today, you find IT organizations that are rapidly trying to simplify their own technology infrastructure because it's become so complex over the years that they've got to simplify it as a way to not only reduce costs, but hopefully make systems work better in general. The same approach applies here is, you know, how do I simplify what I'm doing around capturing information, creating information, finding information, using it, and ultimately disposing of it? And where does simplification get accelerated? By using automation, because I don't need to be in the middle of every activity. Automation can do a lot of this for me and really simplify how we're doing things. And last but not least, innovation. And so again, if you think about technology and roadmaps, innovation sometimes seems like it's one of those words that implies big, but it doesn't have to be big things. Innovations can be small things, and continual innovation that's a bunch of small things still adds up to a lot of change and a lot of improvement over a period of time. So you don't have to swing for the fence and implement RPA just because you think that's going to be the biggest new innovation that's going to help you, and find only that the life cycle of doing that is extensive and time consuming. You can focus on small innovations that continue to make that future focused model more of a reality, and actually make it more attainable in the near term as people are trying to do the rest of their day job. And finally here, creating an embedded change management program is a pretty important activity. I think this is an important activity overall for any kind of, you know, how I'm changing my business initiative. But in this case, being able to have a program that incorporates a change strategy from the get-go, that's secured sponsorship from the executive team, that has a defined and implementable and regularly refreshed communication plan, so that the organization, as it evolves and grows, changes, is constantly in the know about this activity and why information governance is important. Creating what we call an adoption dashboard. How do I know, again, when you think about measurements, how do I know how well all my programs are working? And so this idea of an adoption dashboard could be a great way to keep it, you know, in the minds of everybody, that they see where things are going with governance, and how adoption is going, and what kind of improvements are occurring because adoption is being measured well. And then what's the long-term life of this program? Again, I can't stop it like a project. I have to have an ongoing plan for its continual execution. So, but change being kind of the key element that drives success and ultimate adoption of any kind of new thing, and certainly as it relates to information governance, critical for adoption success. All right, well, I think I've hit it right on the money, except...
I was going to say, you went right until the end.
Except that I might not have left any room for questions. We can certainly, if there's questions, happy to answer them. If you have to move on because we've taken up your 30 minutes, which is greatly appreciated, feel free to send an email to me or Shana, and we'll be happy to answer them right away.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and ask at least a couple for those who are interested in staying. And then the remaining questions we have, we'll go ahead and follow up via email. There were a number of questions regarding the recording or presentation. Yes, we will send out a recording of this webinar in the form of a thank you email within 24 to 48 hours. So to start on a question that came in the chat, would be great if you could share how you calculate and define your maturity model. I see this as being very useful in our organization.
So the maturity model, I'll just spin back to that so we can talk about it. So the maturity model, if you look at the left-hand axis there, 0, 1 through 5, there's actually text definitions that I don't have in my slide, and I don't have in front of me, and I did not memorize them. That have been created, and like I say, we've defined them. Other people have probably defined similar things, but it falls in line with, if anybody's familiar with other types of maturity models and how they're defined, capability maturity model for maybe a managed service provider or an outsourcer, things like that. It has similar levels of maturity that as you go up the scale of things that you have to do and you have to prove in order to say, yeah, I am at a level 4 because my, my IAM charter contains the following attributes, all which match to being at least a level 4. And we're happy to share, like I said, we're happy to share our definitions to what those are in the model.
Okay, and I'll ask just one more since you're already on the maturity model. What timeline is average for the defining the criteria in the maturity model?
So this could be done pretty quickly. It shouldn't take an awful lot of time with the right group in the room, again, a multidisciplinary team, to kind of think about what is it that's important to you to measure here. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that we've listed here. And by the way, this graph is an example of an actual maturity model that we did a year or so ago for a client. And so that listing exercise was probably part of the first week of activities that we did to knock out this maturity model. It can happen pretty quickly. In our case, we don't come to the table with a blank sheet of paper and go, well, what's important to you? We have the list, and then we kind of start eliminating things that may not be important.
Great, and for the sake of being respectful for time, again, if you have any questions that you've submitted in the Q&A that haven't been answered, we'll go ahead and answer them via email. If you can think of any more questions after this, or if you're watching the recording at a later date, if you could just scroll right to the end where we had our email addresses up. Yep. You can email any one of us personally, quack@gimmal.com or shane.horka@gimmal.com. Or if you go to the next slide, you can always email us at info@gimmal.com or visit our website, www.gimmal.com. And again, for those interested in a recording of this webinar, we'll be sending it out between 24 to 48 hours. That concludes it. Thank you, everyone.
Time, much appreciated.